to the play. Unsportsmanlike conduct. Number 49 on the defense. 15-yard penalty. Third down. Unsportsmanlike conduct. Unsportsmanlike conduct. Unsportsmanlike conduct. Unsportsmanlike conduct.
Unsportsmanlike Conduct, Thursday morning podcast. I'm your host, Mike Silva. Week 4 NFL action coming up. Jeez, already, man. Feels like league just started. I mean, still figuring out, making sense of a lot of things. There are 10 things that we know for sure, and I laid those out in Tuesday morning's episode. If you haven't heard those yet, definitely check them out. The episode is 10 Things We Know, 3 weeks into the NFL season. You can find that wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Also, put those clips on the YouTube channel. We don't have 100 subscribers yet, so we don't have a custom URL. But you, your friends, people that listen to this podcast can help us get there. Look below in the show notes. You'll see the link. Check out the YouTube page. Be sure to subscribe. And like I said, you'll see those 10 things we know broken into 10 different clips. And I also got the yeah, but, are we sure the Raiders are good segment in there as well. So check that out if you haven't already. And then, of course, you'll find all these clips on social media. Of course, Twitter, at therep.network, Instagram, at therep.network, all things Repertoire Podcast. So all unsportsmanlike conduct, NFL and NBA takes that you love, in addition to Don't At Me, Society Taboo kind of takes, and then Play It By Ear, all of our hip-hop takes. But right now, we're talking NFL action, taking a look ahead at Week 4. I'm going to do a rapid-fire go through each of the games. I won't take up all of your time, I promise you. We have a pretty good slate this week. 8 good games, 4 marquee games, in my estimation. Then you've got 5 lopsided games. You've got 3 games between shitty teams. Won't spend too much time on those, but we'll cover them nonetheless. Before we get into all that, however, time to revisit our Super Bubble. Super Bubble top 8. So spoiler alert, they're in there. Bill Parcells used to always say there are about 8 teams in the league competing for a championship. So I agree. I don't think there's 10, 12. You could argue that 5 have better odds than the other 3, but it changes. The season fluctuates. People can do their power rankings, but power rankings are very prisoner of the moment. Recency bias. You're going to see Denver in a lot of top 10s. I don't want to take it away from them. Look, last episode I actually gave them some praise. Really good defense, really good run game. They haven't really played anybody yet. I have to kind of see a couple of things from them before I want to give them that kind of a nod. But we're looking at the end of the season. I'm trying to give you all big picture takes. If you're going to bet futures, you're going to try to bet on who's going to win it all or who's going to at least appear in the Super Bowl. This is where the value's at. Hey, let's not be cute and talk about power rankings and look who's in it this week, the Cowboys, and they're not in my Super Bubble top 8, although they are just on the outside looking in. So with all that, I'll quit the long monologue here and just dive into the meat and potatoes. So starting the season and into last week, I said that our top 8 NFL teams, in no particular order, are your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Los Angeles Rams, San Francisco 49ers, Seattle Seahawks, Buffalo Bills, Baltimore Ravens, Cleveland Browns, and then, of course, your Kansas City Chiefs. So the AFC is actually as is. I don't have any changes on the AFC. I still think, I guess I can kind of give you a breakdown on ranking these. I think Buffalo is the best of the bunch. Right now, if the playoffs started, I would bet heavily on them to make the Super Bowl. Week 1 looks like more of an aberration. I thought Pittsburgh might come out and need to win one at least. But Buffalo's offense is high-flying. You've got the more recent good Josh Allen, right? Jekyll and Hyde. We didn't see the ugly Josh Allen from years past, who we saw the first 2 weeks of NFL action. They handle business. They knock Washington out. I think Buffalo is the best team in the AFC. Kansas City, they've got a lot of problems right now. The defense is porous. One of the worst in the league statistically. Any way you look at it, they're at the bottom of a lot of those rankings. On top of that, the offense has been a little bit sloppy. The running game hasn't been reliable, hasn't been great, but it also hasn't been awful. The problem is they turn the ball over. They love putting the ball on the ground. So that's not going to last all season. I think Kansas City will figure it out. They're still a top 2-3 seed in the AFC. But I do find it interesting that just like last year, this year it's kind of a newer trend of 7 playoff teams. So you're only going to have 1 bye week. They're in danger of possibly missing that now because of the last 2 weeks. I mean, really, Kansas City could be 0-3. I think 1-2 is right because they probably should have beaten the Ravens. But, I mean, they laid an egg. I'm not impressed by them the way that I thought that I would be, but we'll see. I mean, they've been in all of these games, screwed up there at the end against the Chargers, tons of turnovers, no-look passes from Mahomes. They'll clean that up, and they'll still be very relevant come January and probably even February. Baltimore, team that beat them. Baltimore I've got in that bubble as well, and I think the main reason is you've got an MVP, you've got a coach who's done it before, and you've got the GOAT, Justin Tucker, best kicker of all time. You've got a lot of things in your favor. What I don't like, obviously, all the injuries, tons of injuries on both the running game and, of course, on the defensive side. I don't like that Marquise Brown loves to drop the ball, especially touchdowns. He had 3 of them he dropped in that Lions game. And I definitely don't like that all of these games come down to the last minute. Like, you're holding your breath, not knowing if they're going to win or lose the game until you literally see a final. You see the final score. So that gives me a little bit of pause. But I like their tenacity. I like their ability to overcome challenges. And even with all the injuries they've had, they've been a threat. They've got a tough game this week, which we'll get into. But I still like Baltimore in that bubble. And then, of course, Cleveland. Cleveland running the ball at a ridiculous rate. The defense, it's got a ton of talent and a lot of big names. But up until last week, where they definitely lit up a bad Chicago team, hasn't really produced on the level that you would think. Now, granted, we're just getting out of that preseason type feel. September is kind of preseason 2. It's almost the real preseason since the actual preseason is just second-team practice for half the league. Cleveland, I still want to see them come from behind. I still want to see what they can do with Baker Mayfield with the ball in his hands, knowing he has to get it done. But they might not end up in that situation very often. So I have them as a top team. They are in the Super Bowl. NFC, Tampa Bay. Look, the pass defense is, oh man, it's awful, and it sucks that it's another team yet again that Brady's playing for with a shit ton of talent on the defensive side, a ton of quote unquote defensive geniuses, a ton of talent, and yet they still can give you a damn near perfect passer rating going up against them. I mean, people are throwing it 72%. Accurately against them. Like, that is ridiculous. I can go out there and complete 1 out of 2 passes probably. But, you still got Brady. You still have all that talent. You've got all the continuity. That's been a, very overtold story, so I won't get into that too much. They'll figure it out. Brady's not going to let them get complacent, and later in the season they're going to be relevant. I thought that they would probably go 1-1 against the Rams this year. Maybe win a game and lose a game if they play in the playoffs. Well, they've got the losing part out of the way, so that means if they play the Rams in the playoffs and I'm right, then they'll beat the Rams. We'll see. The Rams right now are the best team in the NFC. I think they're the best team in the NFL. They were my preseason Super Bowl pick, I guess, I found out right along with everybody else, so I'm not telling you anything that a lot of people haven't already told you. But their offense is ridiculous. Their defense is still taking a little bit of time to pick back up, which I think is the best defense in the league. You've got Stafford. You've had this team that's been relevant and actually been in the Super Bowl. And the question has always been, what could they do if they had somebody better than Goff at quarterback? Well, we're starting to see that now, right? We're starting to see that with Stafford. Stafford's lighting it up. He's on an MVP pace. He is going to continue to torch the league. The Rams are the best in the league. Now, the last two spots, Seattle and San Francisco. I had them in there. I no longer have them in there. Last episode, I told you that Seattle's defense is a problem. Everybody knows that. But the one thing people haven't really spoken about is their second half offense. They've put up 14 points total in 3 second halves. You're not winning big games putting up that production in the second half. So I don't think they're viable. You know, the running game hasn't really complemented Russell Wilson all that great. Look, Wilson is playing out of his mind. Playing, you know, if you look at just the Russell Wilson football card, it's going to look like every other season. But the players around him, I mean, you're really asking Russell to carry them. The whole let Russ cook should be let him cook, not, you know, hey, let Russ get us out of any and every problem, including a bad defense and a no-run game and da-da-da-da. Anyway, they're no longer in my bubble. They might come back if they clean up the defense, they start scoring in the second half, they'll come back. And then San Francisco, they're out at least right now. Look, 2-0 on the road to start the season, although both of those were hold-your-breath games, and I don't think either one should have been since the combined over-under for the teams they played was 11. And their over-under was 10.5. So, I mean, the fact that they're having to sweat these games out gives me pause. They cover the second game, blow the cover against the Lions with their almost comeback. And then the Packers game. They fall behind 17-0. I give them credit for coming back, you know, making a game out of it, taking their first lead of the game with 37 seconds left to go. But they left 37 seconds on the clock when really it could have been 27, 25 maybe. You know, if Jimmy doesn't rush to snap that last snap, maybe they can get the play clock down another 10 seconds. If Shanahan decides to kick the ball into the field of play on the ensuing kickoff instead of kicking it through the back of the end zone, you know, we're looking at possibly a different outcome for that game. So the coaching, the decision-making on both sides, you know, the quarterback and the coach. Garoppolo, I told you this on Tuesday. Garoppolo doesn't choke, but he just does dumb shit when it matters most. Kind of like James Harden. I don't think Harden is a choke, but he tends to put his foot up his ass in the worst possible time. And that's what I see with Garoppolo. I'm not in favor of rushing to get Trey Lance out there, even though he does have the rest of the team is good. This is a playoff, possible Super Bowl team roster when you look at all the players surrounding the quarterback position. So I don't think that throwing Trey Lance in would necessarily be the same as throwing Fields or Lawrence or Wilson into the starting lineup of shitty teams. But I don't know what you're going to get out of Lance this year. You know, maybe in the future, yes. I've defended Jimmy, and I've got, you know, like I keep alluding to this quarterback pod, which I'll eventually do. But there are limitations. I've got to see him do it consistently. And the other thing, too, so far so good, knock on wood, he's been able to remain on the field this year. Maybe if we have a season where he actually stays on the field the entirety of the season, or at least a majority of it, like we did in their Super Bowl run, it's a different story. So we'll see. Both those teams, though, boom, they're on the outside of the Super Bowl looking in. Maybe they make their way back in, but right now I see enough flaws that I can't comfortably suggest that either of them will win the Super Bowl. The two teams that took their spot, the Arizona Cardinals and the Green Bay Packers. And thinking about this, first of all, Green Bay, we just saw beat San Francisco. Even though they wanted to give San Francisco that game, you've still got Aaron Rodgers, the most talented quarterback ever, in my opinion. He's still an elite player. I mean, he's the reigning MVP. So just that alone puts them over the Niners, in my opinion. Now, granted, the Niners have owned the Packers when healthy, when they've played with all the right guys. They've pretty much beat them soundly the last couple of years. Last year, banged up. Obviously, they don't win that one. But I give Rodgers credit here. People wanting to give Shanahan all this praise as great coach, great coach. I don't know, man. Like, I got to see it. I got to see him make some non-bonehead decisions. I have to see Shanahan put a game away, put a team away and win. And he so many times doesn't do that. Now, let's look at the Packers. The running game, you've got Aaron Jones, dynamic back, who I think they need to feed more often. Receiving core, they look like they rely a hell of a lot on Devontae Adams. Every time there's a big play, where's Devontae Adams? But, hey, he gets open. Somehow he always gets open. You know where the ball is going. He always gets open. You've got Robert Tonyan, another really good tight end on the way up. And I think with the other receivers, Rodgers has shown us in the past, he's gotten it done with far less. Defense, still some question marks, although they really played tough against the Niners last week. So I like what I saw of that team, a lot of resilience. The way I put it is, if you were to face Green Bay up against any of the other Super Bowl teams, how would they fare? I think they'd pretty much hold their own. So I've got Green Bay soundly in the Super Bowl top 8. And then Arizona. Arizona has a big test this week, which I think will tell us a lot about their team. But you've got Kyler Murray playing at an MVP level. I would much rather have Kyler Murray than Jimmy G. Of course, I'd rather have Russell than Kyler Murray, but Kyler Murray is really coming on, man. Like he's taking that leap. If he hasn't already arrived, he is arriving like now. You know, depending on how you define arrive. The defense has had its questions, but look, it's going to be one of those defenses that plays with a lead. You know, they know that they're going to rush out there, score quick. Defense just has to kind of hold serve. Force some turnovers, force some mistakes, high flying, get in that pass rush. It's inconsistent. And, I mean, of course, you mention Arizona, you have to mention Cliff Kingsbury. I don't know what we get from that guy as a head coach, but so far so good. I think Arizona has a puncher's chance because they have a high-flying, dynamic quarterback like Murray. I mean, look, to win the Super Bowl in this league, you've got to have a quarterback that can get it done. And it's not, we need a quarterback that won't lose us games. That's a start. That's how you become a playoff team. But if you want to become a contender, somebody who can win the Super Bowl, you've got to have a quarterback that can go out there and pull some magic out of his ass. And he's been able to do that. He's been able to do that this year. When healthy, he's been able to do that last year. So I've got Arizona also in the Super Bowl top 8. So that's Tampa Bay, the Los Angeles Rams, Arizona Cardinals, Green Bay Packers, Kansas City Chiefs, Baltimore Ravens, Cleveland Browns, Buffalo Bills. In no particular order, those are your 8 true title contenders. Mike's top 8, just like MySpace. Lock it in. These are the teams you want to bet on come January, come February. All right, going to dive into a Week 4 preview. Quick run through all the games. Before we do that, though, I'm going to take a quick break. So don't go anywhere. Turn the volume up, tune in, and I'll be right back.
Excuse me, I'm talking to you. Hey. JK. But what's up, everybody? It's your boy Jacquees from the Don't End Me podcast. Do me a favor. Head over to our YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button when you get the chance, okay? The cool thing is when you subscribe, you'll be the first one to get all of our unfiltered takes on today's latest controversies, current events, society, and relationship talks from a guy's perspective right when it's published. How dope is that, right? So you can find our link on the show notes. Please help us grow. Spread the word about Don't At Me and the rest of our repertoire family of podcasts. All right, let's get back to it.
All right, Week 4 action starts tonight. You're listening to this on a Thursday morning. Thursday night football, Cincinnati and Jacksonville. We'll get into that game here in a minute. Just looking at the whole slate this week, we've got 8 what I would call good games, right? 8 really good games I want to watch either full coverage of or red zone. Like, I've got to see what's happening in these 8 games. So let's start out with the marquee game of the week. 2-1 team going against a 1-2 team. So just that alone, you're thinking, all right, well, there are better games and better matchups. They're cross-conference. Okay, you're thinking, well, there are some divisional games that are better on this week's slate. But I think anytime you have an icon going up against his former team, that's kind of the marquee game of the week, of maybe the year, of maybe the decade. I won't go as far as to say the decade, but regular season games, this is as big as it gets. Obviously, I'm talking about Tom Brady going back home. Well, going to what he called home for 20 years, Foxborough. Bucks at Pats. Bucks are 7-point favorites. This is our Sunday night football game. Look, I think the Pats have a ton of talent, and I think that, get the quarterback position right, maybe get that a little bit of season under, Mac Jones, then maybe we're talking playoff team, and depending on how good he is, maybe a contender in the future. This year, that's not the case. Tampa is rolling off. They're the defending champs. Brady has the league's high 10 touchdowns. New England will be without Stephon Gilmore. We already know. Their best corner, right? You've got Mac Jones, who's a rookie quarterback, going against a, on paper, really good defense, but statistically a really bad defense. Could really go any way, right? Like, from just those factors alone, you don't know what you're going to get from Brady from an emotional standpoint. I mean, is the first quarter going to play like a Super Bowl where everybody's kind of tense and, jittery, the nerves take a while to shake off? I don't see that being the case. Even though they're on the road and they are 7-point favorites on the road, I really like Tampa here. They also might be without Gronk, which kind of sucks. I think that'd be really cool to see Gronk up against the Pats. They're definitely without Scotty Miller, who they put on IR for a few weeks. They put him on IR to pick up Richard Sherman, who they're going to trot out in the secondary, which I don't know if you're getting a whole lot from Sherman anymore, but at the same time, you look at the rest of that secondary, the biggest weakness, the one thorn in the possible repeat chance, you got to think he's going to do something, right? So they bring in Richard Sherman, and then, of course, AB, Antonio Brown, is going to be out another week on the COVID list. I like the Pats here. I think Brady will get out to a couple of scores early. Tampa's running game is shit, but I think between all the different offensive weapons they have in the receiving game, between Brady knowing what the defense wants to do, you could say, hey, the defense knows what Brady wants to do. I just don't think that the talent measures up with Tampa right now. Not in the current health of the team, the current active roster. Maybe if these teams were to play next year, it's a different story. Right now, I think Tampa wins this one. I don't know, the whole going back to Foxborough thing, I mean, it's written and over with. I think if this game happened 10 years ago, I think it's a bigger story. But Brady's going to ride into the sunset eventually. Either, next year or, I mean, I'd be surprised if he retired next year, although he said 45. He's also said he'll retire when he sucks. He definitely doesn't suck yet. So let's say 3 to 4 or 5 years. That's ridiculous. Let's just keep it at 3. It's not, these two teams, collision course. Pats are still very much in a rebuilding mode, retooling mode. Bucks are in win now mode, and it's going to be like that for the next 2-3 years. And then we'll have Brady retired. Maybe he'll break some other precedent where they say, hey, forget the 5-year rule. You're in the hall right now. Doubtful. Rules are rules. But, I'm going to be tuning into this game. I think it'll be fun. Would I be shocked if the Pats win? Maybe a little bit, just because of what we've seen so far. Their offense is very anemic. But I think it'll be a fun game, tons of drama. Be kind of close. I think Tampa wins it comfortably, but I don't know that they blow the Pats out. Next marquee game, the two NFC West rivals. Seattle at San Francisco, who is minus 2.5 at home. So these teams are both, as I mentioned, outside of my super bubble. For now, they can always come back. Gone through all the problems they each have. Look, just straight up, Seattle at San Francisco, that's almost always must-see TV. At least it has been over the last decade. And each team has a lot to prove. Seattle falling to 1-3 would be a nightmare for them in a division that you could possibly have 4 playoff caliber teams. Well, you have 4 playoff caliber teams, but 4 actual playoff teams, maybe. You never know. Could happen. San Francisco, 2-0 on the road, 0-1 at home. Are they going to drop to 0-2? If they lose this game, are you going to start hearing the boo birds? I mean, look, I told you I don't think Lance is ready, and I don't think he's necessarily ready to trot out now. But anytime the little gimmick plays had him on the field against the 49ers, the crowd lost. I mean, against the Packers, the crowd lost their mind. You know, he was out there. It was exciting. You can feel that palpable electricity. So I think the fans might kind of rush that to happen or might press the issue sooner than they need to. But if San Francisco falls to 2-2, I very much expect the talking heads to start, oh, well, is it Trey Lance time? I don't think it is, but it's going to be hard to ignore all that noise. This is going to be a huge game. We'll see if Seattle's D can hold up. San Francisco with injuries on the running game, are they going to be able to hold a lead? I mean, based on the last 3 weeks, Seattle can't stop anybody, and they don't score in the second half. So you'd think if San Francisco can get out to a big lead and hold on to it, they'll be good. You don't want to have them chasing and playing from behind, because I also don't know how I feel about Jimmy G playing from behind. But that'll be a really good game. The bigger game, Arizona at LA, the Rams, -4.5 at home. So this is for the current NFC West lead. I told you I think the Rams are the best team in the league. I also told you Arizona is in the Super Bowl. So it's going to be a lot of fun. This is a true test for Arizona. Is their defense going to do enough? Their offense is going to score, no question. The Rams' defense is still kind of taking shape. Kyler Murray is going to be able to break a couple of big plays here and there. He seemingly has one of those backpedal throws that just rainbows into the receiver's hands once a game. The question here is, will Arizona's defense do enough? They're definitely going to score. I just want to see if they're going to be able to keep up with the Rams. That's going to be a really good game. Vegas, the Raiders at the Los Angeles Chargers, who are 3.5-point favorites. This is our Monday Night Football game. This is the last of the 4 marquee games that I have from this week's matchups. Look, Derek Carr is on an MVP pace right now, leads the league in passing. Is he going to be able to continue that? Saw a little bit of, he came down to earth a little bit in that Dolphins game, made a couple of mistakes against a good defense. You've got Justin Herbert on the other side in prime time. He played 2 games last year in prime time, 65% passing, 578 yards, 6 touchdowns, no picks. This is a really good matchup. This is going to be for, I think, really whoever wins this game is going to be able to puff their chest out and say, hey, we're legit. We're at least a playoff team. I had the Chargers as a playoff team earlier this season. If they lose to the Raiders, obviously not the end of the world, but the AFC I think is going to be pretty deep, and this division is deep. Kansas City's 1-2 alone in 4th place. That's going to completely go upside down in a month. So now's the time to strike. Now's the time to try to get that lead. The Chargers love to make boneheaded penalties. They've beat themselves, give Dallas credit for putting that one away, but, criticize the Chargers a little bit for beating themselves up. They had really untimely illegal shift penalties last week. One cost them a touchdown. The other cost them a first down conversion, which didn't matter because they ended up going for it again, 4th and 9, and got it. But still, I want to see if it's kind of a Gruden and Staley matchup. Are the Raiders going to continue to be able to develop pressure with just sending 4 people? Are they going to be able to get to Herbert in time? So this is going to be a really good game, a really fun Monday Night Football game. And I like the Chargers in this spot because they're at home. Raiders have shown some flaws and have been, I think, a little bit lucky to win. But it's going to be a true test to see if the Chargers, beat yourself problems have gone away or if they remain. So far, looks like they remain. 4 other good games this week. We've got Carolina at Dallas, 4.5-point favorites at home. This is going to be Carolina's first true test. And this is ultimately a matchup of Dallas's offense versus Carolina's defense. Carolina's offense, you've got Darnold in this reclamation year. He's been great so far. You've got McCaffrey, who's, banged up against the Texans. A lot of different storylines from a talent and big name standpoint. Carolina, though, if they win this game, then I'll start paying a little bit more attention. Even then, I won't crown them and say they're a shoo-in to be, a contender or a playoff threat. If they win this, though, I mean, they have really good chances at making the playoffs. I think that they, even before their 4-0 start, or 3-0 start, I should say, I thought that they would be right there at that 9-8, 8-9 range, maybe as a wild card team. I thought they'd get out to a good start. They've looked better than I thought. The defense is a lot better than I thought. But Dallas, you could say what you want about McCarthy getting in his own way. Dak is next level. He's a really good quarterback, and that offense is ridiculous. They've got weapons. They can move the ball. I mean, this is going to be the first true test for Carolina. I like Dallas in this game, though. I think Dallas wins this one, and this is going to be your big overreaction game. Dallas beats a 3-0 Carolina team, and then all of a sudden, could they win it all? I don't think they're on that level yet, but this offense is really good. Cleveland, 2-point favorites on the road at the Minnesota Vikings. This one's interesting because the Vikings could very easily be 3-0. They very handily beat the Seahawks. They should have beat the Cardinals. If Joseph makes a 37-yard field goal, they're 2-1. And Cincinnati, they weren't able to beat them in overtime. So, 2-0-1, 3-0, whatever. They're 1-2. I think they've underperformed thus far. But they're a good team. They score. And Cleveland, while their defense looked better last week against a shitty Chicago team, against a rookie quarterback in his first start, on a dysfunctional team with no offensive line and a coach who might be out before the end of the season. Yeah, hey, other than that, though, Cleveland looked great, right? Cleveland just really blew them out. Can they be balanced, though? I want to see how their defense plays against a really good offense. And if Minnesota jumps out to a quick lead, is Mayfield going to be able to bring them back? I'm curious about that. This will be a good game. Really don't know where I stand on this one. I kind of like Minnesota as an upset pick here. Home dogs, I mean, you can't overlook that. 2 weeks in a row, 2-point home dogs. We'll see. And, I mean, they win that, they're right back in the thick of things. They were my 9-8, 7 seed in the NFC. Maybe they start to take shape and reclaim that and follow that destiny a little bit better. But this is going to be a really fun game. Baltimore at Denver, -1 at home. So this is Denver's first true schedule test. They're playing who I have as the AFC representative before all the injuries, but hey, I stick with it. They're playing the Ravens. Baltimore is always in close games. This is going to have to be a low-scoring game. I don't know how this becomes a shootout. And I think that Denver actually has a really good chance to win this game, be 4-0, and be atop the AFC West alone at the end of this week. So I like their defense a lot. I like that they're able to manage the clock, control the ball. Bridgewater knows his role, perfect in that game manager position. Vic Fangio just always knows how to get something out of his defense, and I think that he might have Lamar on his heels a little bit. For me to take Denver seriously, however, because I saw this coming. I thought they'd get out to a 3-0 or maybe 4-0 start. They did this a few years back with Trevor Siemian. All of a sudden, they fall back down to earth. You have this, a benefit of an easier, softer schedule to open. You've got home field advantage, right? Elevation, people coming in a little bit rusty, not in game shape, don't always cope. Curious how COVID players kind of fit into that. A lung illness coming into a place with thin air, and I don't know. We'll see how that goes. I won't be surprised with either outcome. I'd be surprised with a blowout, I'd probably say. I actually kind of like Denver in this game, though. I think Denver will win this one, but even with that said, I don't know how real they are. I won't shit on them. I think they could be a playoff team, but they'll be a wild card at best. The last good game, and really this is kind of a shitty game, but it's two good teams on paper, and it's kind of a playoff game, I think. It's a do-or-die game. Indianapolis Colts, 2-point road dogs at the Miami Dolphins. We get our Wentz versus Brissett showdown. Yeah. Man. So the Wentz situation is really interesting. The Colts obviously have him this year. They risk losing a first-round pick if he plays a certain amount of snaps. So at what point do you start to say, we need to keep our first round pick? This guy's not the answer. Either let's sit him to rest and only be out second round picks instead. Do you flat out cut him? I mean, that would be about a $15 million cap charge. I doubt that happens. And then next year, if they let him go after the next year, then they get off scot-free after year 2. But it's interesting because if they fall to 0-4, I mean, Tennessee's going to go 3-1 this week. Their matchup's coming up. They'll win that one with their eyes closed. They're going to suddenly be realistically about 3.5 games back since they already lost the game at Tennessee. I think this is it for the Colts. They don't win this, they're done. And I mean, the season might already be done, but now you're looking at next year. You're looking at quarterback. You're thinking about draft implications. It's a mess. Miami, I mean, they got to get the quarterback situation figured out. Tua hasn't been the guy. Brissett's been a really good, stable stopgap, and I think he can continue to kind of play that role, almost like a Teddy Bridgewater. But this one's do or die. I think as deep as the AFC will be, and you've got 4 possible playoff teams in the AFC West, at least as of today, I don't know that you can mess around and lose these games. Buffalo's going to run away with the East, so Miami's not going to want to play around with, like, their only option at that point is wild card, and they're going to fall way behind if they hit 1-3. Especially with all these AFC losses. So this one's a playoff game already. All right, then we've got 5 lopsided games. These ones, man, I might catch some highlights. I'm pretty sure you'll see a lot of highlights from these games because you've got good teams versus really shitty teams. I'm not going to watch a ton of any of these. You've got Houston at Buffalo. 16-point spread. 16. I heard 17 earlier this week. I wouldn't be surprised if it, falls at 17. Look, you've got Davis Mills, rookie quarterback, and I don't say rookie quarterback in the sense of Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, marquee college names coming in. I'm talking Davis Mills, second day pick, coming from Stanford, and sure, set some Stanford records, but, I mean, this guy's going on the road to Buffalo, which can be a pretty hostile environment to play. Buffalo is feeling really good about themselves. That's a huge spread, but I wouldn't be surprised if Buffalo covers, and covers 20 points, 25. It could get really ugly is what I'm saying here. Backdoor cover possible. Maybe Buffalo blows them out in the first half, falls asleep in the second half, and it's a 31-17 game. I think that's unlikely. I think Buffalo just completely blows them out, but we'll see. I don't really care to watch much of that game. Giants at Saints. Saints are 7.5-point favorites at home. First time this year. Not the first time they've been the quote-unquote home team, but the first time this year in the Mercedes Superdome down in New Orleans. Of course, the hurricane screwed some things up. Saints have been playing well. Their defense that they had last year comes right back in, doesn't miss a stride this year. Get after the quarterback, force turnovers. Jameis, if he can limit the mistakes, he's sound and steady. He can at least put the ball down the field. One thing that Breeze couldn't say, even though, look, we're talking about an all-time quarterback versus Jameis. The 30-30 man, 30 for 30. But, the Giants on the other side of the coin, they're better than 0-3, but barely. They could very easily be 2-1. The questionable offsides against Washington. They lose in a last-second field goal last week to Atlanta. Giants aren't a very good team. The sad part of all this is Daniel Jones is actually playing pretty well, and he's having a pretty nice season. But lost in all that is, the Giants suck again. I think the Saints roll. The Giants don't do anything great, in my opinion, and I think 7.5-point dogs. Maybe the Giants can backdoor cover, but that's their best bet. They're not winning this game. Tennessee Titans, 7-point road favorites at the Jets. I don't really find a need to talk too much about this game. The Jets are a dumpster fire. Tons of injuries on the O-line. Zach Wilson, rookie quarterback on a shitty team with not a lot of help around him. Tennessee's defense isn't very good, but they're experienced, so I like them to kind of look like a really good team against the Jets. Tannehill has been a little bit flakier than, this new and improved Tannehill that we've come to know in Tennessee. He's actually been on his back a lot more than you would like to think. But, I mean, they're playing a terrible Jets team, so I think this one's a gimme. KC, the Chiefs, 7-point favorites on the road at Philadelphia. You got Andy Reid, who, glad to hear he's doing better after his health scare last week. Going to Philadelphia, so the return of Andy Reid, not the first time it's happened. They're going against a team with Jalen Hurts, who I'm not really sure is a quarterback. I'm not really sure he can play the position very well. He's got great quotes, something about you drop a deuce, you don't stare at it, you flush it and walk away from it, and that's what we're going to do with this game. Hey, dude, whatever you got to say, whatever gets you going, right? Whatever floats your boat. You could drop another turd this week at home, and I don't think it's going to make any difference. I think even though KC's defense sucks, they're going to blow the Philly defense off the field. I mean, Philly's defense is actually not bad. They've got some pass rush, but they're on the field too much. The offense can't get it done. If Hurts can't move the ball against this shitty Chiefs team, dude, Minshew Mania, let's look what he can do. Pittsburgh at Green Bay. Green Bay is at home, 6.5-point favorites. Rodgers looks locked in again. Their defense isn't great, but they've been playing physical. I like what you see in the corners with Alexander and the rookie. In Pittsburgh, I mean, Big Ben, statuesque. Man, what a mess. And this is actually an interesting parallel. I think it was Cowherd was talking about the approach in Pittsburgh, coddling their quarterback, and how they have no succession plan and they look like they have no future, versus Green Bay, who maybe rubs their quarterback the wrong way, but they do have a succession plan with Jordan Love. Whether he's good or not remains to be seen, but at least they have an answer to the question. And even with all the offseason drama and woes, it's been quiet. Rodgers looked pretty fired up after that win against the Niners. So I like them to continue this winning streak and beat Pittsburgh. Steelers are in trouble. They've got to figure something else out. All right, rounding out the week's action, the shitty team matchups. Like I told you, we've got Thursday Night Football starting tonight. We've got our Jacksonville Jaguars at our Cincinnati Bengals, 7.5-point favorites at home. If you're a Bengals fan listening to this podcast and you're like, where's the love? No love. This guy's a Bengals hater. You might be right, man. I got to start looking at this. The Bengals could be 3-1 after this, and they beat a shitty Pittsburgh team. They beat a pretty good decent Minnesota team. They really shouldn't have lost to the Bears, but that's a different story. Home teams on Thursday Night Football, they're better than you think, but they actually aren't great against the spread. So this could be a little bit closer than 7.5 points, but I like Cincinnati to win this one. They've got a tough game next week with Green Bay, so this gives them 10 days to study for that. Try and win this one while you can. Jacksonville is one of the easier games you're going to have on the schedule. It's Thursday Night Football, so I'll probably watch it. I'm happy to have some football, but I'm going to be multitasking, put it that way. Washington, 1.5-point favorites on the road at the Atlanta Falcons. It's funny. The Falcons started 0-2 and looked like they could be one of the worst teams in the league. After this week, I think they'll go 2-2 because Washington has a terrible defense, even though they'll have you think otherwise. With all the talent they've got in the front four, they're just not able to put any pressure. Even with Matt Ryan looking like Big Ben, toast, standing there with statue cement shoes on. I like Atlanta in this spot at home. They're going to get the Jets next, and then they have a bye. So they might be 3-2 after the bye, when really they're one of the worst 5 teams in the league, I think. We'll see. This one, like I said, not very interested in. You got Heineke. It's It's a lot of boring football, in my opinion. And then you've got the crown jewel of the week. We've got our Detroit Lions at the Chicago Bears. Goff, Fields, Foles, whoever else, Dalton. Fuck it, let's see if McMahon's available. I mean, this is kind of the mess that I thought it was going to be. Look, last week I said, why do you announce that Andy Dalton is your starting quarterback if he's hurt? You don't have to say anything. You give Fields his first start, and then, Dalton's our quarterback when he's healthy, though. Come on. Now Nagy is saying that all three quarterbacks will be up for consideration. So Foles just out of nowhere looking around like, shit, okay, me? Okay, cool. Like, what a mess. What is this mess? Chicago is just an absolute wreck. I don't know. Detroit is close in every game, and I'll give them this: they might finish, 4-13, but they're gonna win a couple games against the spread. They fight hard. They are the good bad team for sure, and I think that Goff, even though he's limited, does enough to get them close in some of these games. I kind of like Detroit on the road here. Chicago, I feel like probably should win with their defense and home field advantage, but I wouldn't be surprised if Detroit pulls this one off. I wouldn't be able to tell you, though, because I'm not watching a minute of this game. So that wraps up all of our Week 4 action. Thank you for tuning in. Check us out Tuesday morning for the Tuesday morning podcast. That'll be a recap of Week 4 and our Yeah But Hater segment. Again, I'll remind you, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And be sure to spread the word. Rate, review, subscribe, and talk to you Tuesday morning. Peace.
Yeah, that was a good one.